Somewhere on the road home, a man kneels at a pool of cold, clean water. He has been traveling for months. He is filthy. He wants to wash. In his pack is a plant, a thorny thing like boxthorn that pricks the hand like a rose. He tore it off the floor of the sea, and this plant is the prize. It does not grant immortality. It gives back youth. Old men become young men. He intends to test it on an old man first. He sets it down on the bank. He gets into the water, and something in the ground smells it. A snake, no name, no speech, no God behind it. It takes the plant, turns, and goes back down its hole, sloughing its skin as it goes. That is the ending. The oldest long story we have ends with a man sitting down in the mud and weeping because a snake was faster. Now hold that and take the pieces apart. A wild man made out of clay, living with gazelles, tamed by a week with a woman. A bull sent down from the sky that opens pits in the ground. A survivor of a world-ending flood, living at the mouth of the rivers who cannot die. This is the Epic of Gilgamesh. And almost everything you have been told about it quietly compresses three separate literatures into one. Because there is no such thing as the Epic of Gilgamesh. There are Sumerian poems. There is an Old Babylonian version. There is a Standard Babylonian version. They are different texts. They tell different stories. In the oldest of them, Enkidu is not Gilgamesh's beloved equal at all. He is his servant. So here is the promise. I will tell you the whole thing, front to back, and every time I hand you a detail, I will name the text it comes from. The seams are where this gets interesting. Start with the material. This story does not survive on papyrus or parchment. It survives on baked clay tablets in cuneiform across 2,000 years and 2 languages. The oldest layer is Sumerian, and it is not an epic at all. It is 5 separate short poems about a king called Bilgames. That is the Sumerian form of the name. Gilgamesh is the later Akkadian form. The meaning is still argued over. Something close to the ancestor is a hero. Then, in Akkadian comes the Old Babylonian version from roughly the same period. This is the first time someone welds the material into one long connected poem. It is known by its opening words, the way these texts always are. Shutur Ilashari, surpassing all other kings. And then, centuries later, comes the version nearly every translation you have read is based on, the Standard Babylonian version. 12 tablets. Its first line is different, and the difference is the whole point. Shah Nakba Imuru, he who saw the deep, not surpassing all other kings, not a boast about power, a claim about knowledge. The later editor changed what the poem was about, and that editor has a name, which for this period is almost unheard of. Sin Leki Unnini, roughly, moon god, accept my prayer. A Babylonian catalog of texts and their authors credits him with the series of Gilgamesh. He worked somewhere between 1300 and 1000 BC. And then it vanishes. Cuneiform dies out. The last tablets are written around the 1st century, and after that nobody alive can read a word of it. He comes back on the 3rd of December 1872 in London, in a room belonging to the Society of Biblical Archaeology. A former banknote engraver named George Smith, self-taught, working through tablets dug out of Nineveh, cleans the crust off a fragment and finds a boat, a flood, and a bird sent out over water. He reads it aloud to an audience that includes the Prime Minister of Britain and the Archbishop of Canterbury. Understand what that room is hearing. Not a parallel to Noah, something demonstrably older than the written Noah, with the same birds in it. A newspaper funded an expedition on the strength of that evening. Now the story itself. It begins in the city called Uruk in southern Mesopotamia in what is now Iraq. A real city. You can walk on the ruin. And the poem opens by making you look at its wall. Go up on the wall, it says. Walk on it. Inspect the brickwork. See whether it is not fired brick. It gives you the city like a surveyor. 1 part city, 1 part date grove, 1 part clay pit, half a part the temple of Ishtar, 3.5 parts in total. Its king is Gilgamesh, 2/3 god and 1/3 man, which is not how fractions work. His mother is the goddess Ninsun. His father is the deified king Lugalbanda. The Sumerian king list gives him 126 years on the throne, calls him Lord of Kulab, and says his father was a phantom. The Assyriologist Andrew George puts the warning plainly. It is vain, he writes, to hope to find in history such a hero of legend. Something was there. It was not this. And this perfect king is a catastrophe. He gives the young men no rest. And there is a line about the young women that has caused a century of argument. In some readings he claims the bride before her husband does. But the tablet is broken in exactly that place. The rite of the first night is a reconstruction, not a reading. So the people do the only thing available to them. They complain upward. They cry out to the gods of heaven, and heaven hears it. And the divine solution is not to remove him. The gods do not depose Gilgamesh. They decide to manufacture him an equal. The goddess Aruru washes her hands, pinches off a piece of clay, and throws it down into the open country. And enkidu is made, hair over his whole body, hair like a woman's, thick as barley. He knows nothing of people, or of bread, or of settled land. He eats grass with the gazelles. He shoulders in at the watering hole with the herd. He is not a savage. He is an animal, and he is content, and he is a problem for exactly one man. A trapper whose pits enkidu fills in, and whose snares he tears out, because he protects the animals. The trapper goes to Gilgamesh, and the king gives him a plan. Take a woman with you, Shumhat. Take her to the watering hole and let the wild man see her. She waits at the water. Enkidu comes down with the herd. She does not fight him, and she does not run. She is not afraid of him. They are together for 6 days and 7 nights. And when it is over, Enkidu gets up and walks back toward the gazelles, and they run from him. That is the hinge of the entire epic. His body will not keep up anymore. His legs are slower. Something in him has changed, and the herd can smell it. But he has gained understanding for the loss. She teaches him. She splits her clothing in 2, dresses him in half of it, and leads him to the shepherd's camp. They put bread in front of him, and he stares at it. He has only ever suckled milk. He eats. He drinks 7 jugs of beer. He sings. He rubs oil into his skin. And then a stranger passes the camp on his way to a wedding in Uruk, and mentions what the king is going to do when he gets there. Enkidu goes white with anger. This is the thing he was manufactured for, and he does not know it. He walks to Uruk. He plants himself in the doorway of the wedding house and blocks it with his foot. The king arrives. Neither of them says anything. They grapple in the street. They shatter the doorpost, and the wall shakes, and Gilgamesh gets his knee down and wins. And immediately the fury drains out of Enkidu. And then, in the Old Babylonian version, comes the sentence the rest of the epic rests on. They kissed each other and formed a friendship. Now the layer rule, because this is where it bites hardest. In the Babylonian material, they are equals. Ninsun formally adopts Enkidu as a second son. In the older Sumerian poems, he is nothing of the kind. He is Gilgamesh's servant. his subordinate. The word used of him is the word for a slave. That entire origin, the gazelles and the trapper and Shamhat and the 7 knights, is Akkadian. It does not appear in the Sumerian material at all. Somebody, somewhere between Sumer and Babylon, took a servant and rewrote him into the person the king loves most in the world. That single edit is what makes the epic work. Now Gilgamesh has an equal, and immediately he is restless. He wants to do something permanent. He proposes going to the cedar forest. And his stated motive is the honest one, which most retellings soften into heroism. He wants his name set up where the names of famous men are written, because he has already worked out the problem. He tells Enkidu he has seen bodies floating down the river. Man is short-lived. Only the gods live forever. The forest is guarded. Its guardian is Humbaba in the Akkadian, Huwawa in the Sumerian, and he was appointed to the post by the god Enlil. That detail is crucial, and it gets dropped constantly. Humbaba is not a rogue monster terrorizing the countryside. He is a civil servant. He is doing a job a god gave him. His weapons are 7 auras, terrors, radiances, not swords, but a field of dread around him that has to be stripped off before he can be touched. Enkidu, who has been in that country, tries to call the whole expedition off. So do the elders of Uruk. Gilgamesh overrules all of them and goes. And his mother climbs to the roof, burns incense, and complains to the sun god Shamash about her own son. Why did you give my child so restless a heart? On the road they dig a well on each mountain, and Gilgamesh sleeps to receive a dream. He has 5, and everyone is a catastrophe. A mountain collapses on him, and Enkidu interprets every one of them as good news, every time. My friend, the dream is favorable, do not be afraid, which is either genuine faith or the kindest lying in ancient literature, and the poem never once tells you which of the two it is. They reach the forest and the story stops to look at it. Green mountain, sweet shade, dense canopy, cicadas, birds answering each other, resin running down the cedar trunks. This is the tenderest nature writing to survive from the ancient Near East, and it is there so that you feel exactly what is about to be destroyed. In the Standard Babylonian version, the fight is a fight. Shamash sends 13 winds against Humbaba and pins him down. He cannot move. And Humbaba begs. He offers the whole forest. He offers to serve him. He offers to build him a palace. And Gilgamesh wavers. It is Enkidu who says, "Finish it." And they kill him. And then they cut the forest down and float the greatest cedar down the Euphrates to make a temple door for the god who appointed the guardian they just killed. Now the Sumerian version, because it is different and stranger. There is no heroic duel in it. Huwawa is beaten by a confidence trick. Gilgamesh takes 50 unmarried young men with him and offers Huwawa gifts, one at a time, for each of the 7 auras. My elder sister as your wife, my younger sister as your concubine. And when the last one is gone and the monster is standing there unarmed and unprotected, he understands what has been done to him, and Enkidu cuts his throat. They carry the head to Enlil expecting praise, and Enlil is furious. And then he takes the 7 auras and gives them away, to the fields, to the rivers, to the lions, which is a real ending, and a bleaker one. The terror is not destroyed, it is redistributed into the landscape, where it still is. They come home in triumph. Gilgamesh washes off the road and fastens his crown, and the goddess Ishtar looks down and wants him, a formal proposal of marriage. And he says no. He could have said no politely, Instead, he delivers what may be the most reckless speech any human makes to a deity anywhere in world literature. He asks what he would have to give her in return: bread fit for a god, clothing fit for a queen, and then he starts listing the men who came before him. Tammuz, for whom she ordained year after year of wailing; the bright speckled bird, whose wing she broke, and who now sits in the woods crying my wing; the shepherd, who heaped up bread for her, and whom she struck and turned into a wolf, so his own herd boys chase him, and his own dogs bite his thighs. And then the line that ends the conversation: you would love me, and then treat me exactly the same. Ishtar goes up to heaven weeping with rage and demands the bull of heaven from her father Anu, and Anu remarkably refuses her first. 7 years of famine will follow. She answers that she has already stored the grain, and then comes the threat: if you refuse me, I will break down the door of the netherworld and let the dead eat the living. He gives her the bull, and the bull comes down, and the ground opens. It snorts, and a pit opens, and 100 men of Uruk fall in. It snorts again, and 200 more. It snorts a third time, and Enkidu falls into his waist. But Enkidu is not entirely a man anymore. He climbs out, takes the bull by the horns and by the thick of the tail, and holds it still. And Gilgamesh drives the blade home behind the horns. And Ishtar goes up on the wall of Uruk and curses them, and Enkidu does the one thing that cannot be taken back. He tears off the bull's hind quarter and hurls it up at her, and shouts that if he could catch her, he would do the same to her. The gods meet, and this is where the epic stops being an adventure story and becomes the thing it actually is. They have killed Humbaba, whom Enlil appointed. They have killed the bull of heaven. Anu says that one of the two of them must die. Enlil says Enkidu, and Shamash, the son who has helped them at every step of the way, objects. They killed at his own instruction, he says. And Enlil turns on him. You are one of them, he says. You go down among them daily, like one of their companions, and that is the end of the appeal. Enkidu falls ill, not wounded. There is no battle and no assassin. He simply lies down and begins to die, and he knows it. His first response is fury. He curses the trapper who found him. And then he curses Shamhat, and it is unbearable. May you never have a household. May you be beaten in the street. He is cursing the woman who made him a person, because being a person is what is killing him. If he had stayed with the gazelles, he would not be here. And Shamash speaks out of the sky and stops him. Why do you curse her? She gave you bread fit for a god and beer fit for a king. And Enkidu takes it back. He turns the entire curse around, line by line, into a blessing. Governors and princes will love you. Men will leave their wives for you. Then he dreams. A man with a lion's head and an eagle's talon seizes him, turns him into a bird, and takes him down to the house of dust, where those who enter never come out, and sit in the dark dressed like birds, eating clay, kings and priests together with nothing. There is no reward in it. There is no judgment. There is no better section. Babylonian death is not punishment. It is dust, forever, for everybody. He is ill for 12 days, and then he dies. Gilgamesh does not avenge him. There is nobody to avenge him on. He covers his friend's face like a bride's. He circles the body like an eagle whose young were stolen. He will not let the body be buried. He sits with it, waiting for Enkidu to get up. And he sits there until a maggot falls out of his friend's nose. That one line does more than any speech in the poem. It is where the abstraction breaks. Death is not a concept. It is a body going soft in a warm room. And then Gilgamesh comes apart. He tears off his clothes and puts on a lion skin. He stops washing. He stops cutting his hair. He walks out into the wilderness. And he is doing something very specific, which is worth naming. He is turning himself back into enkidu. He is going back to the gazelles. And he says out loud the sentence the rest of the poem is about. I am afraid of death. Shall I not die too, and be like enkidu? So he goes looking for the one man said to have escaped it. Utnapishtim, the faraway, the survivor of the flood. And he arrives at a mountain called Mashu, Twin Peaks. Its top touches the vault of heaven, and its base reaches down to the underworld. It is the gate the sun goes through. Every evening the sun enters the mountain, travels through it in the dark, and comes out the far side at dawn. And the gate is guarded by scorpion people, a husband and a wife. Their terror is awesome, their glance is death. And they look at him and see the divine flesh in him, and they let him speak. And what they tell him is that no mortal has ever done this. There are 12 double hours of absolute darkness inside, 24 hours of tunnel, no light ahead of you and none behind you. He goes in anyway. And the poem counts the leagues off for you one by one, and every one is the same sentence. Dense is the darkness, and there is no light. At the 8th league he cries out. At the 11th, dawn is breaking somewhere ahead. At the 12th he comes out, into a garden beside the sea where the trees are made of stone. Carnelian bearing fruit. Lapis lazuli growing as foliage. An entire orchard of gemstones, hanging, beautiful, and completely inedible. He has walked through the inside of the world and come out in the most gorgeous place in ancient literature, and it does not help him even slightly. And then, at the shore, there is a tavern. Somebody is running a bar at the end of the world. Her name is Shiduri. She is a sabitu, an alewife, a brewer. She keeps a vat and a mash tub, and she is behind a bolted door. Because she has looked out and seen a man coming who is dressed in animal skins, whose face is sunken, who has not washed in months, and she assumes he is a murderer. And now the single most important layer split in this whole story, and hardly anyone flags it. In the Old Babylonian version, this woman gives Gilgamesh the answer to the poem. It is on a tablet from Separ, and it is the oldest carpe diem in the world. Gilgamesh, where are you wandering? The life you are looking for, you will not find. When the gods created mankind, they kept life for themselves and set death aside for us. So fill your belly, make merry, day and night, make every day a festival of rejoicing, wash your head and bathe yourself. Look at the child who is holding your hand. Let your wife delight in your embrace. That, she says, is the lot of mankind. That is the whole answer, delivered by a bartender 4,000 years ago. And in the Standard Babylonian version, it is gone. The later editor cut it. In that recension, she says none of it. She simply tells him where to find the ferryman. Andrew George treats the change as one of Sinleki Unnini's deliberate innovations. Think about what that means. The famous consolation of Gilgamesh was removed from Gilgamesh. The later editor did not want the answer handed over at the halfway mark by a stranger. He wanted the man to walk the rest of the way and arrive at it himself. So she points him at the boatman, Shanabi, who works for Utnapishtim, and who is the only one able to cross what lies between them. Because between the shore and the island are the waters of death, which must not be touched. And Gilgamesh, being Gilgamesh, smashes the stone ones that made the crossing possible. He destroys the only means of transport to the only place he needs to reach, out of temper, before asking a single question. And Urshanabi, who is patient, tells him to go and cut 300 punting poles, each one 60 cubits long, and to seal them with pitch. Because now they have to pole across, and each pole can be used exactly once, driven in and let go before the hand can touch the water. He uses all 300. When they run out, he strips off his clothing and holds it up as a sail with his own arms. And on the other side is an old man, not a giant, not a god on a throne. An old man who looks him over and says the cruelest possible thing. Why are your cheeks hollow? Why is your face sunken? You who were made from the flesh of gods, you look like a man who has come a long way for nothing. And Gilgamesh, who did not come all this way for philosophy, asks the practical question, "You look exactly like me. How did you do it?" And Utnapishtim says, "I will reveal a secret matter, a mystery of the gods." There was a city called Uruk on the Euphrates, and the great gods decided to send a deluge. No reason is given in Tablet 11. It is simply decided. In the older Atrahasis epic, which this passage is adapted from, the reason is noise. Humanity had become too numerous and too loud, and the gods could not sleep. That is the Mesopotamian reason for the flood, not sin, noise. Every god swore an oath of secrecy. And Ea, the clever one, kept the letter of it and broke it completely by refusing to speak to the man at all. He spoke to the man's house. Read fence, wall, wall. Listen, read fence, and understand, wall. And then he told the wall exactly what to do. Tear down your house and build a boat. Abandon your possessions and save your life. Take aboard the seed of every living thing. And the boat is not the shape you are picturing. The dimensions are the strangest detail in the entire account. It is to be equal, length and width, a perfect square, 120 cubits on every side, 6 decks dividing it into 7 levels, and each level into 9 compartments, a floating cube. Roof it over like the Absu, Ea tells him. Like the fresh water deep under the earth. This is not a ship. It is a sealed box built to imitate the underworld ocean, and he has to lie to his own city about what he is building. Ea supplies the cover story. Tell them Enlil hates you, you are leaving, and the gods will rain down abundance. He loads his family, his kin, the craftsmen, and the animals. He watches the weather. He goes inside, and he seals the door with pitch from the inside. And then it comes. The storm gods go ahead of it. Nergal tears out the mooring posts of the world. The Anunnaki lift their torches and set the whole land alight with the flare. One person could not see another. People could not recognize each other in the downpour. And the gods themselves become frightened of what they have done. They flee upward to the highest heaven, and they cower there against the outer wall like dogs. 6 days and 7 nights of wind and flood. On the 7th day the storm dies down. Utnapishtim opens a vent, and light falls on his face. And he sits down and weeps because everything is flat. All of mankind had turned back into clay. The floodplain was as level as a roof. The boat grounds on Mount Nemush, which older translations spell Nisir. The mountain holds it fast for 6 days. On the 7th he releases a dove, and it comes back. He releases a swallow. It comes back too. He releases a raven, and the raven sees that the water has gone down, and it eats, and it circles, and it does not come back. So he lets everything out, and he makes a sacrifice on the top of the mountain, pours a libation, and burns reed and cedar and myrtle. And the gods smelled the sweet savor. And the gods gathered like flies around the man making the offering. And the mother goddess lifts the great lapis lazuli beads at her neck and swears by them. These days I shall never forget. And then Enlil arrives and loses his temper completely. And Ea talks him down, and the speech he uses is the moral spine of the entire flood tradition. He does not deny the punishment, he asks about proportion. Instead of a flood, he says, let a lion come and reduce the people. Instead of a flood, a wolf, a famine, a plague. Punish the sinner for his own sin. Do not simply drown everything. And Enlil, without apologizing, boards the boat, takes the man and his wife by the hand, and touches their foreheads. Until now, Utnapishtim was immortal. From now on he and his wife shall be like us gods, and he settles them far away, at the mouth of the rivers. Now the comparison you have been waiting for, because you have heard the birds, and you have heard the mountain, and you know the other story. What is actually shared with the flood in Genesis is a great deal, a divine decision to destroy humanity by water. One man mourned in advance. A boat built to specification, family and animals aboard, a sealed door, a landing on a mountain, birds released to test the water, a sacrifice afterwards. A deity who smells that sacrifice and is moved by it, and a permanent token attached to a promise never to do it again. That is not a vague resemblance. That is a shared narrative structure with shared narrative furniture, and the Mesopotamian version is demonstrably older as a written text. Now what differs, and it matters just as much, the reason. Genesis says the earth was corrupt and full of violence. That is a moral cause. Atrahasis says humanity was loud. Tablet 11 gives no reason at all. It simply happens because an assembly decided that it would. And the gods behave differently. Genesis has one god who acts consistently and grieves. Tablet 11 has gods who panic, cower, and turn on each other afterwards. The boat differs. A cube in Babylon, a long chest in Genesis. The birds differ, dove, swallow, raven in one, a raven, then a dove 3 times in the other. So what is the actual scholarly position? Not simply that Genesis copied Gilgamesh. That claim is popular, and it is far too clean. Geoffrey Tagay showed that Tablet 11 is not even original to Gilgamesh. It is an insertion, adapted from a version of Atrahasis, probably by the editor of the Standard Edition, meaning the flood story was already being copied, adapted, and rehoused inside Mesopotamian literature itself, centuries before the biblical version was written down. So the honest description is a shared tradition. A story that circulated across the Near East for a very long time and was retold by people with very different theologies. And the retellings argue with each other, which is the part I find genuinely interesting. The Israelite version does not read like a copy. It reads like a rebuttal. It takes a flood caused by irritated, sleepless gods and makes it a moral judgment. It takes gods who cower against a wall and gives you one who never loses control. What is shared is the plot. What is not shared is the point. And you cannot see either one clearly if you insist on holding only one of the two. Back to the island where Gilgamesh has heard nothing he can use. The man was made immortal by a one-off lote of an assembly after a unique catastrophe. There is no method to copy, and Utnapishtim knows it, and sets him a test which is either mercy or cruelty. If you want to escape death, start by escaping sleep. Stay awake 6 days and 7 nights. And Gilgamesh, the strongest man alive, sits down, and immediately a mist of sleep breathes over him, and he is gone. And Utnapishtim turns to his wife and says the quietest, most devastating line in the poem. Look at the young man who wants eternal life. Sleep breathes over him like a fog. His wife says, touch him, wake him, let him go home in peace. And he says no. He will lie about it, bake a loaf of bread a day and set them beside his head. He sleeps for 7 days. And when they shake him awake, he says immediately, I had only just dozed off. And they show him the bread. The first loaf is hard as a rock. The second is like leather. The third is soggy. The fourth has gone white. The fifth is moldy. The sixth is fresh. And the seventh was still on the coals when they woke him. There is no argument left to make. The proof is a row of bread. He cannot beat sleep for a week, and sleep is the little brother of death. So he is sent away. Utnapishtim orders the ferryman to take him to the washing place, clean the filth off him, throw away his skins, and dress him properly. And as the boat is pushing off, the wife says he came a long way and should not leave with nothing. So Utnapishtim tells him the secret. There is a plant at the bottom of the freshwater sea, thorny like boxthorn. If a man gets hold of it, he becomes young again. Its name, the old man, has become a young man. He cuts an opening, ties heavy stones to his feet, and lets them drag him down through the water to the floor of the deep. And he finds it. It cuts his hands. He takes it anyway. He cuts the stones loose, and the sea throws him back up onto the shore. And he tells the boatman his plan, which is the plan of a decent king. He will carry it home to Uruk and feed it to an old man first, to see whether it works. And then 20 leagues from home he stops at a pool of cool water to bathe, and he puts the plant down on the ground. And a snake, catching the scent of it, comes silently up out of the water. It takes it, and going back down, it sheds its skin. And that is why the snake is young every year and you are not. It is the oldest explanation we have for why snakes shed, and by far the most expensive. And Gilgamesh sits down and cries. And what he says is not about death, it is about waste. For whom have my arms labored? For whom has my heart's blood been spent? I gained no good thing for myself. I have brought a benefit to a lion of the earth. And then, with nothing at all in his hands, he turns to the ferryman and says something you do not expect. Go up, Urshanabi, onto the wall of Uruk. Walk on it. Inspect the foundations. Examine the brickwork. See whether it is not fired brick. 1 part city. 1 part date grove. 1 part clay pit, half a part the temple of Ishtar. 3½ parts is the expanse of Uruk. Those are the lines the poem opened with, word for word. The story ends by repeating its own first paragraph back to you. This is the answer, and it is deliberately unspectacular. The immortality available to you is fired brick, laid by people, outlasting the people who laid it. The opening line called him the man who saw the deep, not who conquered it, saw it. He went and looked and came back and told people what is down there, which is what a wall is and what a poem is, and why we are having this conversation 4,000 years later. Except that is not where the tablets stop. There is a 12th tablet, and it wrecks everything I have just said, and you should know why. Tablet 12 is not a continuation. It is a nearly word-for-word Akkadian translation of the second half of a Sumerian poem, Bilgames, Enkidu, and the Netherworld. And in it, Enkidu is alive. He walks and he talks. There has been no bull of heaven, no divine council, no 12 days of dying, no maggot. In it, Gilgamesh has dropped 2 objects, a ball and a mallet, through a hole into the netherworld. and Enkidu, his servant, volunteers to go down and fetch them. Gilgamesh gives him precise instructions. Do not wear clean clothes. Do not put on oil. Do not carry a weapon. Do not kiss the wife you love or strike the child you hate. Because anything that marks you out as living will get you noticed down there. Enkidu ignores every single instruction, and the netherworld seizes him and keeps him. And then comes the reason the tablet was attached at all. Enkidu's shade is brought back up through a hole in the ground, and Gilgamesh interrogates him about the dead. Did you see the man with one son? I saw him. He weeps bitterly at a peg driven into his wall. 2 sons? He sits on 2 bricks and eats bread. 7 sons? He sits among the junior gods on a throne and listens to music. The man with no heir eats a loaf like a fired brick. So the afterlife has a rule after all, and the rule is descendants. What decides your condition down there is how many people are alive up here to remember you, which is coherent and which flatly contradicts the House of Dust in Tablet 7, where everyone eats clay and nobody is better off than anybody else. Scholars call Tablet 12 an inorganic appendage. It was bolted on. It ignores the plot. It resurrects a dead character in order to make a point. And I suspect it was bolted on because somebody could not leave fired bricks standing as the final answer and wanted a second one underneath it. So how does he actually die? The Standard Babylonian epic never tells you. It stops at the wall. But the Sumerians wrote it in the poem called The Death of Bilgames, and it is the piece almost nobody reads. He is lying ill, and he receives a dream in which the assembly of the gods explains his own life back to him, and they are gentle and completely final. Enlil has made kingship your destiny. He did not make eternal life your destiny. That is the sentence. They bring up the flood. They remind him that when the assembly swept the deluge over mankind, one man was preserved. Zusudra, the Sumerian name for Utnapishtim, and the point they make about him is that he was an exception, and that the exception is closed. It happened once. It is not a door you can walk through. And then they give him a compensation, and it is a strange and generous one. He is not brought back, and he is not made immortal. He is made a judge of the dead, governor of the netherworld. He passes verdicts down there alongside the older gods of that place. And here is what the Sumerians did with him afterwards, which no epic tells you. They prayed to him. So take the whole thing apart one last time. 5 Sumerian poems about a king and his servant, an Old Babylonian poem about a king and his friend, a Standard Babylonian edition by a named editor that cut the bartender's advice, imported the flood out of another epic, and changed the first line from surpassing to seeing, and an appendix that contradicts the rest of it. That is what the Epic of Gilgamesh is. Not a book, a 4,000-year argument between scribes. And they are all arguing about the same thing, and not one of them lies to you about it. No version lets him win. He goes home. And the thing that survived is not him. It is the tablet, baked hard in the fire that destroyed the library it was sitting in. Somebody 4,000 years ago wrote down that a man cannot beat death, pressed it into wet clay, and that clay is still here, and he is still saying it to you, which, if you look at it directly, is the only kind of immortality anybody in this entire story actually got.